delighted to see you all. Thank you all for coming. We've had a great response to this tasting, and with very good reason. We are absolutely delighted to have Samuel and Benjamin from Mas de Daumas Gassac to joining us this evening from the vines, live from the vines. You'll see them both outdoors, braving the weather, braving technology to bring us all the latest from the estate. As usual, and just for those of you who are, this might be your first session with us, a quick bit of housekeeping before I introduce our esteemed guests in the estate. We will try and run this to an hour as much as we can, although of course if we overrun, we overrun. I'm sure it would be delighted to stay on and take your comments and your questions and your feedback. I think we are recording the session because there's a number of people who couldn't join this evening who would love to be able to drink their wines whilst following along to the video. And we are also introducing a little bit of technology this evening, which, Charlie, perhaps if I can pass over to you to explain the details, because I don't really understand it, but it's very, very simple. I'm just a Luddite. And then I shall introduce our guests. Thanks.
Absolutely. So we're just felt that we really wanted you guys who take the time to join us on these to just give us thoughts a little bit more freely. So we've teamed up with an app called Vivox, who make our life very simple. And all I need you to do, I think I've explained, is just go on to either take a picture with your phones, or if you're struggling or want to do it on computer, there's the Vivox ID that's there. I'll also put it into the chat, and you'll see that it'll come up. And throughout the tasting, I'll be sending you some questions. Very simple in terms of what you're thinking of the wines and rating them out of stars of 5 and stuff like that. And we'll just review those towards the end of the tasting, just to sort of let you see how everyone sort of perceive these wines. If you've got any questions, just shoot me in the chat and we'll sort them out from the side. But yes, do participate as much as possible. That'd be great.
Thank you, Charlie. So I'm going to pass over to Samuel very shortly. I know that he's going to give us an absolutely fascinating précis of the history, of the family, of the region, of the estate, of the wine. So I'm going to keep this introduction very brief. We will encourage you to try the first 2 whites as Samuel is talking. So the Pont De Gasac and then the Terra white as well, and we'll go into a bit more technical detail about the wines a little later on this evening. This is just so you don't get thirsty during the talk. I suppose, to keep things very brief from my side, it's a great honor to have you with us, Samuel, and you as well, Benjamin. You know, if there's one estate which has really put this region on the map, the Languedoc, then you really have to lay the responsibility, good or bad, at the feet of Mas de Daumas Gassac. And if you can cast your mind back to the 70s and even the early 80s, this was wine wilderness as far as people were concerned. And it took a considerable amount of bravery, of patience, and I imagine sheer bloody-mindedness on the part of your parents, to actually take on this massive challenge and create wines which have variously been compared to Grand Cru Burgundy, to the Lafite de Languedoc, or La Tour, if you were Jay McQuitty of the times. But we are really dealing with a true pioneer from this region, and one which has unquestionably laid the foundations for the successes that we see in the Languedoc today. So I'm not going to say any more than that, because we have Samuel and Benjamin here with us. Just remains for me to say, great pleasure to have you both with us today, gentlemen. Samuel, please take it away. The floor is yours.
Merci, Tom. Can you hear me well, first of all?
I think we're good.
Okay, because we decided to come to the top of the estate, which is, there is a stunning view, and I'll turn around and you'll see right away, but it is windy tonight. And wind is great. Wind is great because the last 4 or 5 days we've had a bit of rainfall, which is golden coming from the sky at this time of the year. It really nourishes the grapes. The fruits are starting to grow. They have not ripened yet, but they have started to grow. And having water now makes everything. It's like, I don't know. It's like going across the desert and suddenly having a bottle of water. It's like the vine is sucking it up. And honestly, I can't remember a month of July so cool in a way. The nights do not go above 15 degrees Celsius. The day are barely 30, 32. If you're going to the beach, you might wish that it was higher, but for human living here, working here, and for the plants, it's just the best condition. So let's just pray it continue like that for the rest of the summer, and then we are in for an extraordinary 2021 vintage. I'm going to pass on the phone now to my assistant, and my assistant is my son, Eden, and so my hands are free. Do you need to turn it? Yeah. And so I'm starting first. If everyone has a glass of wine, I pour the Pont De Gasac so I can talk and drink at the same time, and you guys can hopefully listen to me and have a glass of wine in your hand. We are at the top of the Daumas Gassac estate, and if you just see behind me, you probably see some trees and around the property, around the vineyard. It's probably the base of everything. Let's go back to the late 60s, early 70s, when both my parents, so Aimé and Véronique Guibert, one is a successful leather maker, so working in the leather making business in Millau, a bit further north, and the other one is kind of teaching in Montpellier, my mother, and they were looking for a house to start a family outside the countryside, the nearest city being Montpellier, about 25, 30 kilometers away. And they start searching around kind of near the sea, and then further down in the north part, more towards Millau and the mountain of the Cévennes, and arrive in this little village of Agnan. And in Agnan, they go to, at the time, the only place to get any kind of information was to go to the local bar. Not that it had any good wine or any good food, but they went to the local bar and someone said, well, actually, I know this family called the Daumas. They are about 2 kilometers away out of Agnan, and they are too old. They're trying to sell their farm. And so to cut a long story short, my parents arrived in this old farm, a farmhouse in the southern France. It's called a Mas, M-A-S. So the name Mas de Daumas Gassac, first word means farmhouse. The second name, Daumas, is that the name of that family that was farming here for 8 or 9 generations. And we're talking in 1972 of one brother, John Daumas, is 69, and his 2 sisters, 72 and 75 years old, still cultivating like you would in the 19th century. Only horses. They didn't own a car, they didn't own a tractor, they didn't know what the word chemical meant. The water came straight from the well, and they had no running electricity. And the guy was still plowing his field, no vineyard, just a small 1 hectares of claret, white grape, making a white wine that was for their own consumption and to exchange at the local market. And the rest was, they were growing corn, they were growing olive trees, all kind of farming, and they had sheep, they need no cow here, but sheep and goat. But at their age, working like the way they were doing, they just couldn't run the farm anymore, and they wanted to retire. And so my parents purchased a very old farm with no idea of starting a vineyard. And that's 1972. In an area, Languedoc, as you mentioned, Tom, that was probably more known for its, I think you have the English have a word that says Blanc. And the Blanc obviously is the very average wine that you probably, that in the other term in French, we ever say that you wouldn't offer that wine to your worst enemy. How did that change? Well, they looked, my parents renovated the house, and within 6 months, they had this land around that was abandoned. Forest was growing back, the garrigue, as we call it here. Local forest is oak trees behind us. Arbousier, the only tree that carries fruits. There is none there right now, but you can see a small green kind of, it's almost like a tiny green cherry that will turn red. That's the only tree that grows in the garrigue, and the rest is a low shrub, thyme, rosemary, sage, lavender, and so on, that grows in the middle of that surrounding forest. And with the 25, 30 hectares of farming land that was going back to forest, they decided they will start a farm. And initially, my dad thought, let's wipe out half of the forest, just create one big piece of land where we'll grow corn. And quickly they realized that first, my mother said, if you cut one single tree, I'll divorce you. So that would put an end to the idea of having one big field. And second of all, corn require a lot of water. And we are in the southern France, and we need irrigation. And while there is a river that flows in the middle of the estate called Gasac, so Mas de Daumas Gassac, it's not enough to irrigate 25 or 30 hectares. And so they soon turned to vineyard, vine, and decided to start planting. And before doing so, my dad had a very good friend who happened to be the dean of the University of Geography in Bordeaux, a guy who was a geologist, a soil expert. Henri Anglade was his name. He was from the same town as my dad. He had written many books about the great terroir of Château Lafite, Latour, Palmer. So he was a soil expert, and more than a soil expert, he was a terroir expert, a great soil for vineyard. So they invited him here at Domaine Gassac. We're talking about mid 72, June, July, and asked him to have a look around and tell them what to plant. And Henri Anglade goes around for a couple of days and really looked at the soil, studied the soil. And after 4 or 5 days spent at Domaine Gassac, he turned to my parents and said, look, I have found something here that I've never seen anywhere else. Maybe if I had to compare, I would say it's a bit similar to what I have seen in Côte d'Or in Burgundy, but it's really unique to this property. It's unique to this tiny valley called the Gassac Valley. And it's a glacial soil, very, very poor in organic nutrients, very rich in minerals. And I believe you have a terroir, and those are these words, you have the terroir to make a Grand Cru wine. He quickly added, now, having a terroir to make a Grand Cru wine doesn't mean that you're going to succeed to reach or get there within the next few years. It will probably take you 100 or 200 years to get there. But if we're purely talking about the soil and the microclimate that goes with it, I believe this has an extraordinary potential. My dad had one passion, and that was planting. His job was to make leather, and he was doing that very successfully all over the world. But when he had free time, he went to his vegetable garden or planted trees and so on. So hearing those words, he thought, well, this is my chance to combine my hobby with a potential, not a business. I never saw Domaine Gassac as a business. I saw it as producing a few bottles of wine and seeing where it will take them. And so they planted vine. Cabernet Sauvignon was the first vine ever planted at Domaine Gassac and remained the most important grape variety in terms of quantity. It's about, out of the 50 hectares of vine, we have about 15 of Cabernet Sauvignon. And so 72, 73, 74, 5, 6, and come 78, first harvest, they realized that while they have been busy planting a vineyard and doing all kinds of things to set up a winery, they know nothing about making wine. And drinking wine is one thing. Making wine is some kind of a different alley. So they turned to Henri Anglade, the godfather of the viticulture, the godfather of the soil, and asked him, you know, we've planted this vine, we've decided to go for this, I don't know if Grand Cru wine, but high quality wine in a region, you have to remember at the time, that was really not known for fine wine, and that's to say the least. And Henri Anglade, and they say, who could we learn from in terms of winemaking? And he said, well, if you are aiming at the best, there's only one guy that you need to talk to, and his name is Émile Peynaud. Some of you might have heard of Émile Peynaud, maybe even read some of his book. He is probably the greatest enologist before any of those flying winemakers. He was based in Bordeaux and under contract with all the great Bordeaux of the 60s, 70s, 80s. He kind of retired mid-90s, but back in 72, he was at the top of his fame, and the guy advising Palmer, Latour, Lafite, and so on. So when you started receiving letters from Aimé and Véronique wanting to make a Grand Cru or fine wine in Languedoc, he never took the time to reply. Always thought he was dealing with some crazy people trying to lure him down near Montpellier for God knows what reason. And it took a lucky event. One of our friends came to the estate in June or May or June 1978. Spent a couple of days without my parents here at Daumas Gassac, saw what they were doing, and the next week happened to go to Bordeaux, and happened to go to the barber shop, and happened to be sitting at the barber shop near Émile Pénaud, and they knew each other. Our friend knew Émile Pénaud, and Émile Pénaud knew our friend. They started talking. Our friend said, wow, I've just been through the Languedoc. What a beautiful region, so wild, so untouched. And Émile Pénaud rise on his seat and say, Languedoc, I keep receiving letters from these mad people who want to make a Grand Cru wine. Our friend said, mad people, wouldn't that be the Guibert? Yeah, that's it. How mad? Can you tell me how mad are they? Do you know them? How mad are they? And our friend must have done a good job, because not only Émile Pénaud took the time to read the letters, but to reply to my parents, saying to them that he would accept to, first of all, welcome them in Bordeaux so they could kind of learn from him. And then later on, he did say, I accept to accompany you, to help you, to be your mentor, your guide in the winemaking of Daumas Gassac, under two conditions. First one, you don't ask me to come more than twice a year at Daumas Gassac, but you can call me after 9 p.m. every day of the year. And my dad did. Émile Pénaud came in 1978 and 1979 to vinify, or to help him learning the rope of vinification for a couple of weeks. But after that, every week, and even until I joined Daumas Gassac in 2000, and I saw my dad until Émile Pénaud died in 2003, I saw my dad also the course of his time at Daumas Gassac, calling Émile Pénaud at least once a week. First as a mentor, second as a friend, always asking for advice and recommendation and ideas. The second thing Émile Pénaud said is, we will never talk about money. So he was a great guy, a man who accepted the challenge of participating in the birth of a Grand Cru, but without asking for any retribution. I can assure you, he got a nice amount of Daumas Gassac wine in his cellar, and so payment came under the form of gold liquid. And so the Daumas Gassac story begins with a red. The Mas de Daumas Gassac is today a red, a white, and a sparkling rosé. There are a couple of more curiosity, but every year we produce one red, one white, one sparkling rosé. I am the winemaker, the head winemaker. I have been since 2000, trained with my dad, and then continue on my own with a team. Daumas Gassac Red follows the same principle as probably they were defined by Émile Pénaud in 1978. 3 words: finesse, complexity, and elegance. We are looking for freshness. We are looking for elegance. We are looking for balance. We are not looking for blockbuster, high alcohol, 14, 15% alcohol that sometimes you can find in this warm region. Southern France, Southern Rhone, Languedoc, Southern Rhone. It's very easy to get low acidity and extremely high alcohol and extraction. That's not our style. And for those of you who are starting to taste the white, you'll see through the wine, and when Benjamin takes you through the wine, that finesse and elegance and freshness is really what we aim for. How do we achieve that? We achieve that by preserving the forest. If you go around and you look around, you'll see that we don't have just a single vineyard. We have in the estate today 63 small plots of vine, all surrounded by a little bit of forest. Right here where I'm standing, I have one behind me, one that we can see on my left, another one behind, another fourth all around, and each of them are surrounded by this belt of forest that is acting as a natural protection against pests, disease, and keeps our friendly animals and birds around. Birds are not a pest for us. They actually help eating and getting rid of the insects that can be damaging for the vineyard. And when there is attack of oidium, for example, oidium is right now, there's what we say a high pressure of oidium from the neighbors. A lot of neighbors have it. When you have 10, 15 meters of forest in between your vineyard and the neighbor vineyard, it acts as a natural defense. And we pretty much almost don't have to do anything. There's nothing to do, but very little intervention in the vineyard. Second, the microclimate. Let's go down a little bit. And I don't know if my phone resolution is high enough, but if you look in the background, we see mountains. This is the footstep of the Massif Central. It's called les collines de la Serrane. And this mountain brings to us what we call an effet de Piémont. Effet de Piémont is quite well known in Italy. It's cold air coming down from the mountain, going down the hill, and in some case, like in the Gasac Valley, getting stuck in a narrow, tiny valley with trees. And here's another aspect where the forest surrounding the vineyard is super important. We get the cold air being kind of trapped for a few hours is enough, but a few hours every night, we get 10 to 15 degrees in the valley, in the Gasac Valley, where the rest of the Hérault Valley, which is what you have in front of you, probably stays around 20, 25 degrees Celsius. Having such a low temperature during the night, during the ripening season, what I call the ripening season is July, August mostly, and a bit of September. It helps, the cool weather helps to slow down the ripening and preserve acidity, aromas, and flavors. I'll give you an analogy. Let's cook a roast in an oven. There's two ways to cook the roast. You can put the oven at full temperature, 280 degrees Celsius, and your roast will be cooked in probably 20 minutes, but totally dry, will lose of the moist, lose of the flavors, lose of all of its savors. Or you can cook the roast over at 180, 200 degrees, and it will cook for 45 minutes to an hour. And there you're preserving all the aromas, all the flavors. The grapes happen to do exactly the same. When they ripen too quickly, the alcohol start to shoot, or the sugars start to shoot. Sugar will transform into alcohol, and acidity start to drop very quickly. And you ripen the grapes in 7 to 8 weeks, whereas at Daumas Gassac, we go usually up to 12 to 13 weeks of ripening period. So we've talked about vineyard, we've talked about grape varieties a little bit. Cabernet Sauvignon was the first. I have not mentioned the other 20 other grape varieties that we have managed to plant over time at the estates. In the red Daumas Gassac, you will taste close to 20 grape varieties, such as Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Nebbiolo, Dolcetto, Tannat, Tempranillo, Petit Verdot, Syrah, Condorny. All of these brought back from trips that my parents took through Europe, through France, through Spain, through Italy, Georgia, Switzerland, Israel, and every time they'll find a grape variety that they fell either in love with or find interesting, they would bring back cuttings and plant them at the Gasac Valley, in the Gasac Valley, to try them, and trying in 5-7 years of after plantation, and see if the grape variety could produce something quite specific and add it to the blend. So when you get to the red Daumas Gassac, you have a blend of a Cabernet Sauvignon blend, if you want to keep it simple, but in reality, it's a patchwork of all of the European roots from almost any country that produce wine in Europe. We have one of the grape varieties, and it makes my job, the winemaking job, fascinating, because instead of painting with one color, we paint with 20 different colors, and the mix of all is what is exciting. Sometimes we get the Merlot quite high in alcohol, despite what I say earlier, but we get the Nebbiolo very low and with high acidity. So it's a mix of all of this, and it's going to achieve, hopefully, the perfect balance, the perfect drink, like that perfect bite you're looking for in a dish. Well, we're looking for that perfect drink in the wine. Having said that, let's move a bit away from the wind. Each of the grape varieties, it's planted on its own plot. So we don't mix all the grape varieties in one vineyard. There's about 63 vineyards, probably 40 of them or 35 of them are dedicated to the red, and the rest for the white, which we'll talk about later. Probably the third or the fourth major point, we've talked about climate. We've talked about the. Thank you. I'll get soon the Mas de Daumas Gassac white. We've talked about the climate, the soil, the grape varieties. Something I touched base a little bit upon earlier on is the philosophy of preserving nature. It started very early on. Even before the Daumas Gassac was purchased or founded by my parents, one has to remember that we only inherit from the land. We don't create the land. And my parents inherited from a land that was worked by the Daumas family for generation. And fortunately for us, this Daumas family was still working like the 19th century. Not a single drop of chemical had ever seen the land when we arrived here in 1972. All the forest, all the trees were preserved. And what you can give to my parents, and my mother especially, she had the vision of preserving that way. So she did say to my dad, if you cut a tree, I divorce. But she also said, we want to preserve this environment. This is where we live. The water we drink is from the Gasac spring. And as you probably know, when you spray, the first thing that gets damaged is not the plant. It's below. It's the underground aquifer. It's a water reserve underneath. So if tomorrow we start spraying, we will be the first one to damage our own resource, since we still drink the water from the Gasac River. So since 1972 and before, this beautiful setting, this beautiful valley has never seen chemical. We have reintroduced a flock of sheep to graze the grass when it's possible before the birds come out. We plow with horses when possible. It's a very rocky land, and we don't want to kill the horse, so only in a few vineyards we can use animals. But really, what there is behind Domaine Gassac, and has always been there, that's probably the most important point, is a desire to just live and protect Mother Nature, regardless of biodynamic or being bio. It's really preserving the nature that surrounds us. Going into time, the first vintage of Mas de Daumas Gassac Red was produced in '78. It was a great vintage. Emile Penot said, "Bravo, you have succeeded, Aimé and Véronique." But now then came the time to try to sell the first 10,000 bottles that have been produced. And there again, luck or faith came about. Faith came after all the work, but within 2 or 3 years, I think you mentioned earlier Jane McQuitty. The first article ever written about Domaine Gassac was by a journalist from the Goemio who titled within, it was a month of December, my parents just came back from holidays and suddenly the phone started ringing non-stop and they have no idea why. Well, the Goemio, which was a really famous magazine for focusing on food and mostly wine, titled "I have found the Chateau Lafite of the Languedoc," or the Chateau Latour of the Languedoc. And later on, Jane McQuitty wrote her own article. And then there was something in Holland where someone say the Petrus of the Midi, and really that launch. One can do the best job in the vineyard, the best job in the cellar, but if you are not able to sell what you make, there's a very short future for yourself. But that was the beginning of Domaine Gassac, being today distributed in over 70 countries, small allocation going everywhere, since our production is still quite tiny. We make about 7,000 to 8,000 cases of red. That's about 80,000, 90,000 bottles of red. And the white, about 50,000 bottles. We actually, the first vintage of the white came 6 years later, and that was in 1986, the first white Mas de Daumas Gassac. I have got the white 19 right there. The first white Daumas Gassac, was it white 19 or white 20? The first white Daumas Gassac was produced based again on the same idea of a patchwork of grape varieties. It started first with Muscat, Viognier, and a bit of Chardonnay. And very early on, as early as the early 90s, the Viognier, the Petit Manzin from the Jurançon came about. And a few years later, late 90s, we added the Chenin Blanc. So you have a white that has 4 pillars. First one, on the nose will always come the Viognier. White peach, apricot, acacia, honey character, that's a Viognier. And it will be the most pungent, or the most, not pungent, that's not a good term, but the most floral in its first years. First 2 or 3 years of Viognier dominates, and you'll have white peach and the flowers, white flowers coming out through. The second one is usually the one that comes through the mid palate, and that's Chardonnay. More of the creamy character, the mouthful. The Chardonnay plant we came from the Burgundy friend, a winemaker in Burgundy, the Comte Lafont, and that you get more of that character. Then the fat character will develop over time. So if we tasted the same wine probably in 5 or 6 years, you lose a lot on the nose, but you get a lot more on the palate. This white has really 2 lives: first 3, 4 years, from 5 to 20 years. And 5 to 20 years. Why 20 years? Because we have 2 less easy to recognize grape varieties. The third one is Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc from the Huet family. They gave us the Huet family in the Vouvray gave us a few cuttings 20 years ago. Chenin Blanc has this nutty character that comes usually start to appear more after 3 or 4 years. And finally, last but not least, the Petit Manzin. Petit Manzin is extraordinary grape varieties that provide. I don't know if some of you are familiar with how we look at the grapes before harvest. Just before we start the harvest, we look at two charts. And when I say two charts, we look at the analysis, but we taste. Chart number one is sugar. As the grapes is ripening, the sugar chart goes up. But as the sugar chart goes up, the acidity chart goes down. And so the ideal is to find a point where the charts kind of cross with the perfect balance. You get enough sugar to transform into 12, 13, 13.5 alcohol, but you still have acidity that keeps freshness in the wine and you don't have to add any. Well, Petit Manzin is the only grape varieties that I know that keeps both charts going up. You can harvest a Petit Manzin at 15% alcohol, chart is right up, and still acidity that makes your mouth, I think you say puckering, like that, like if you're tasting a green apple. In a warm region like ours, having such a great variety is a magnificent tool to keep balance in the wine, because we have the creamy character with the Chardonnay, we have the floral with the Viognier, we have that more nutty character with the Chenin Blanc, but we need acidity. Acidity is like the backbone in your body. Without a backbone, you stand like this. With a good backbone, you stand straight. And we need a wine to stand straight when young, but also in time. For wine to age, it needs good acidity. One of the magic of this Gasac Valley is that we have a soil and microclimate that preserve freshness, preserve acidity, and give wine that can defy time. My dad passed away in 2016 on 17th of May 2016. So a couple of months ago, we opened 6 vintage from 2000, 98, 94, 88, 82, and 78. And every vintage was still young. Yes, 78 was closer to its end, but we're talking a 40 years old vintage that was still at freshness. And I was still talking to my son earlier on and telling him that the next day, the 78 was actually better. And that's the magic of the Daumas wine. And that's why so often it's, while Mas de Daumas Gassac was a pioneer in this region to show that fine wine were being able to be produced, to this day, I can only cite one wine that can put a vertical of wine going back as long as 40 years old with still youth and plenty of life. It is Daumas Gassac, very proud to continue that. We're not different because we want to. We are different because the soil in this valley is completely different to what we can find in the surrounding. The typical soil of the Languedoc is white limestone. The typical soil of Daumas Gassac is a very fine red powder soil where the roots have to go very down to get their food, and there is a lot of minerals, and that's in the characteristic of the wine has a huge impact in the complexity of the wine. I've been talking for quite a bit, so if there were any question, now will probably be a good time to raise your hand or ask a question if there was anything that wasn't clear that I explained, or you'd like to talk more before I pass the phone to Benjamin for him to take you through the wine.
Well, Samuel, whilst people are thinking of comments or questions, and please keep using the chat as you have been, I'd just like to say, it's been fascinating exploration. Thank you very much for introducing us. There's so many stories there, such a great narrative, such great history, and hopefully continuing a great future. One thing which particularly stood out for me is that you have inherited a sort of an untouched terroir in terms of, we not us personally, but we find a lot of people can be obsessed by terms with wines, organic or biodynamic, as you mentioned, biologic labels, basically labels.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that this isn't something which is really concerns you, that you're more interested in, letting people effectively taste that philosophy from the bottle rather than need it kind of stamped on the label?
That's an awesome question. Thank you. You know, my dad and mom both never tried to walk in the beaten track. They were not afraid. There's a say, you know, if we had known what we were up against, we would have never tried. They didn't come from the wine group. They actually were totally out of it. They came and they believed they could succeed. Where all the people that were here, you know, when you're trapped in, okay, we're in the Languedoc, we can only make bulk wine, this is how it's done. It's very hard to get out of that. It takes usually an outsider to come and say, hey, why not? Let's try it. And it's the same goes for everything else. In 1972, no one, not even care, not even knew the word biodynamic or biologique. They didn't exist. It was a time where people were actually looking for better fertilizer, better and enriching the soil, better chemical, because it would make easier not to work with less tractor and so on. So it was an era where they didn't do it for any label. They did it because they believed in it, and we inherited that. Obviously, when you talk about future, the future lies at this point with the second generation that we are. My four brothers and I, we started 21 years ago. I started in 2000, and then the third generation will maybe at some point do something else. But we've just continued this, not for any label. And it is true now, in the last 5 years, there's a huge pressure to be either to fit in a box: biodynamic, vin naturel, vin biologique. We have definitely a lot of each of those boxes, but so far we've remained out of a label, one of those labels. And I can tell you, biodynamic, for example, biodynamic says you should plant at a certain time of the moon. We've always done that. 40 years ago, everybody who is a good farmer or a farmer with principle knows that there is time of the year or time of the moon where it's better to plant or not. So I would say we are 70% of the principle of biodynamic. We do. There are 30s that maybe we don't follow exactly, but there are also things that works better for our vineyard. So we try to do what's best for our vineyard and nature, not because it fits a box, but because it's best for the place. Sometimes it's hard to explain, but when people, I can tell you one thing: when people come and visit, usually they understand and they don't need to ask any more questions.
Cool. Excellent. Let the wine do the talking. Samuel, thank you so much for that introduction. I think everyone will agree it's fascinating. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm very, very keen to come out and visit as soon as possible. I think just to recap on the whites that we have been enjoying as you've been talking. Obviously, we started with the Pont De Gasac.
Yes.
And just for those, I'll put, just for those who were wondering, I will just put the actual blend in the chat here. Getting quite good at this now.
Thank you, because I probably don't even remember what it is exactly.
Exactly. You give us the love and the passion and the story, and I'll put the boring facts in. I think that works.
You know, no, but you know what it is. It's like you go to a restaurant and you can either enjoy a dish and look at how much saffron is there, how much is there, this or that, or say, okay, does the saffron with olive oil work, regardless of how much gram there is? And so, in the end, you know what? We never know the exact percentage of what is in the wine until our communication manager comes in and say, I need to put up to date, I need to update the technical sheet, so I need to give you exactly how much went in. And that's when we do the work of going back and knowing exactly, okay, there was 79% Cabernet Sauvignon. So we don't look at recreating the same recipe. We really work with our taste bud. That's the number one rule in the cellar. Is the nose is 70% of the work is done with the nose. You end up smelling everything, good or bad. And then we look at obviously the analysis. We get analysis from our own lab and look at them, but they are only there to confirm what we feel. It's the feeling and the sense that direct what we achieve. And in the end, we're never far from, is there a truth? We're never far from, actually it's not that we're never far. We always respect what nature gives us. So if 1 year there is a bit more Cabernet Sauvignon, it's going to be found and felt in the blend. If 1 year Cabernet Sauvignon was because of different natural circumstance, a bit less production, it will reflect in the blend, and we don't try to correct that. So it's nature dictates most things here. We have to help it. You know, wine doesn't make itself by itself. Usually what makes itself is vinegar. But that's our job, yes, is to just drive the wine where we feel it can best express itself.
Excellent. Thank you, Samuel. And then, sorry, no, please carry on.
No, I would say if there's no question, I think it'll be good to let Benjamin then kind of start talking a little bit more about what is also Moulin Gasac. I've talked only about Mas de Daumas Gassac. That's our prime estate, that's the family estate, but we also have a second estate that we started in 1989, so quite a while ago, where we produce a formidable range of super exciting, not more every day, but yeah, not everybody drive a Ferrari, and so we need wine for when I go back down to with my kids and open a bottle of wine tonight. You know, I have a nice bottle of Terra or Eros or Pont De Gasac. This is a great story, and Benjamin who's worked a lot in the cellar with me and the rest of the team, will take you through the wine in more detail than I did.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Samuel.
Merci. Merci. And hey, whenever you want to come, either by yourself or bring a group of people, there is a very beautiful walk. We do 45 minutes around of 1 hour around each vineyard almost, and by foot. And so, you know, you go back as high as 700 meters altitude. You have the stunning view of the whole Hérault. And in the meantime, you see forests, you see, it's mostly forest actually. And you see vineyard, and then we finish with a nice either lunch nice near the cellar, or just tasting in the cellar. So September, best time to come. You see the pickers. We expect 40 pickers for 3 weeks. Last year, 18 different nationalities, all lodge on site. I can tell you, they work hard, but they party even harder. It's a lot of fun. And you know, the energy of this beautiful energy of all these people from Japan, Canada, Ireland, England, Spain, South Africa, all this energy goes into the wine one way or another. You know, there's much better energy there than if you use a harvesting machine with one guy getting bored driving it. The job is quicker with the machine, but the fun is much more there with the hand pick.
Brilliant. Love it. Excellent. Well,
Merci.
I think we could well all be joining you in September. Thank you, Samuel.
Yeah. À toi, Benjamin.
Yes, sir.
Merci.
Benjamin, just a quick recap of the whites. Obviously, we very much enjoyed the Pont De Gasac, and I put the technical stats in there. Now, the Terra white is I think a new wine to probably most of us on the call this evening. Maybe you could tell us a little more about this wine in particular.
Which one? Sorry.
The Terra, please.
Terra. Okay, yes, Terra. Right. So Terra, it's from our second estate, and it's come straight from the foothill of the Seven. So in fact, it's Mas de Daumas Gassac. It's in the middle of our first vineyard, which produce Pont De Gasac, and then Mas de Daumas Gassac, and then after behind me we have a few plots with Terra. So Terra, it's again a blend because we are a blend maker at Mas de Daumas Gassac, and it's an organic blend with 50% Vermentino, 40% Grenache Blanc, and 10 bye Samuel, and 10% Roussanne. So it's the vineyard is it's at the bottom of the mountains, you know, while Pont De Gasac, while 2020 has a strong maritime influence. So it's another test of what we would like to offer to our wine lovers, and so it's always, you know, elegant nose, intense and elegant nose, and with the well balanced with notes of white flowers and lemon zest.
Yeah, that one was That one was delicious, I have to say. And then we obviously have tried and enjoyed and discussed the Mas de Daumas Gassac white, the Grand Vin Blanc. I mean, an extraordinary wine, incredibly complex, really, really delicious, and completely, very unusual, very different. The blend really contributes to something impressive.
We just maybe two words. We have a. Samuel don't talk about, but the process is very special and untypical in the wine industry. Look, I work everywhere in the world, but here we do the same process than we do for the red. So we do the pump over on the right so it's a skin contact process. So during 4 or 5 days, it depends by the test, and we are looking for we ultra oxidize the juice. So we don't, thanks to that, we don't put sulfite on. So, and we protect the wine by the opposite way, in fact. So of course, we lost a few aromatic stuff, but we open few new one, and that's maybe the why we are so pure, and it's a fireworks of flavors. In fact, when you start to drink Mas de Daumas Gassac white, and with its complex elegance, with a lively attack, but also it's with also with a good structure, like a red structure, but with whites, and the mid palate leaning towards a long and refreshing finish. So uncommon white, but directly easy to drink, but with a big story in your test.
Absolutely, Benjamin. And I think that the fascinating thing is, as you're saying, is it achieves this balance, but in a very different way. So if for anyone who might have missed that, you've got a considerable amount of skin contact, 5 to 7 days actually of maceration, but then only a very short time aging in stainless steel only, but 6 months or so before the wine is released. So it's a very different way of ending up. Fascinating one. Yeah. And it's really fascinating, fabulous. So we've discussed, and we must spend some more time on the Grand Vin, the Mas de Daumas Gassac Red, but talk us through now about the Pont De Gasac Red, because this is a particular favorite of mine. I have to say, I really love the Pont De Gasac Red. So maybe tell us about this wine.
Maybe few words about the name, which brings to light the bridge that connects the cellar of the Mas de Daumas Gassac to the mass, to the mass of the Mr. Daumas. So in fact, the Guibert family house, and under this bridge, the river Gassac. So just few words about why the name is Pont Gasac. It's a nod of this special bridge, and so the vineyard is an amphitheater from the Mediterranean Sea, so near the Tow Lagoon, so between Sète and the Tow Lagoon, and you have a clay and limestone terroir rich in marl, and that's why actually it's untypical also for the white and also for the red, because it's also again a blend with 30% Syrah, 33% Cabernet Sauvignon, 25% Merlot, and 5% Grenache. So it's all, and for the Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, it's important to say that it's the terroir of lime, sandstone, and Ronassian marl slop, which is perfect, for us to make the red with the similar philosophy that we use for Mas de Daumas Gassac. So it's always a nose with a big, expressive, and complex nose, because the uncommon blend. It's not at this good value wine. It's unusual to test Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot plus Grenache. and so it's always for us. The month is powerful, round, and always with warm tenant, wrapped in a structured and balanced finish with plus Syrah with a nice spices.
I just put my alongside the breakdown of the grape, the cépage, which you mentioned, Benjamin. I put in my tasting note as well, just because again I'm a big fan of this wine, and I do think that the slight sort of change here to allow Syrah to kind of come to the fore is a really interesting evolution of the style of the wines. I do think that the Rhônish varieties, certainly at this level of production, seem to really work. They seem to really enhance the blend. So I mean, I think it's such an easy wine to love. It really is.
Yeah, it's a everyday wines and good value, of course, but it's a part of the first steps to understand Mas de Daumas Gassac Red. So we use an untypical grape varieties, and thanks to that, you have a particular wine, but easy to drink with a big nice velvety texture, and yeah, good pairing to do with. And now it's a house, the house wine that you can have for everyday food or party or time with your wife to share.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and again, it's good to see the kind of,
it's an elegant wine with a strong personality, in fact.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks to the grape varieties.
So we seem to have some fans for this wine, which is good. As I've made it very clear, I certainly am myself. And then now the Terra Red, when we were discussing Rhone varieties coming to the fore with Pont De Gasac. Now, even more so here, we're really moving away from the Cabernet dominant origins of the Grand Vin, and now we're kind of really embracing a Rhone blend. So, I mean, do you think this is the future for the estate to take on more Rhone varieties, or is this just a particular project with Terra?
It's a particular project because it's our Languedoc AOP.
Yeah.
So to be in this AOP, you must use Syrah, Grenache, and Carignan, in fact. So that's why it's this blend here. The important thing here is to understand that the limestone vineyard of the Cevennes are at 400 meters of altitude. So that's why we are similar than at the same level than in the Rhone North, in fact. So with the south influences, so it's always the focus for us is to try to offer a round and not too heavy alcohol wine for the tester. And so we are looking for the altitude, and here it was just the perfect vineyard to make the style that we have in our mind. The philosophy that we respect, the philosophy of Aimé first, and then now through Samuel and his brothers, we just follow the Mas de Daumas Gassac Red style to make to make the wine that Samuel explained before.
Yeah, and I noticed that in the the Terra range as well, there's no oak. I'm correct in thinking we're just using stainless steel. Is that also an attempt to offer a different style from the previous philosophy?
The Terra?
Yeah.
Terra 5 years ago was more with a more tannin intensity, But by the way, we start to work more with the to create the round tannin, and yes, we guess the red berries month, the powerful, the round and warm tannin are better than too aggressive one. So that's why we start to change a little bit the style of Terra. But now it's going to be like the same this year and the next year, because we control more the vineyard now. 5 years ago it was the beginning of this wine, so now we control a bit more what we can get from the vineyard, and it's easy to create the process we would like to do on that cuvée.
And then as we move on to the Grand Vin, which is it's such a treat. And Samuel charged us through some of the grapes that are here. And one of the surprises for me was I must admit I had assumed that all of these crazy varieties from Croatia's Plavac Mali, to obviously things that we know a little better like Carmener and Pinot Noir, and all of the Italian grapes and the Georgian Saperavi. I just assumed this was a big old field blend, and it all got sort of picked and thrown in together. But so it was a revelation to me to find out that these are all individual plots. This must, as a winemaker, this must be incredibly difficult and complex to sort of manage everything and get it all to work.
So yeah, in fact, it's of course it's difficult, but it's easy also because we follow the maturity of all the grape varieties, and the tank capacity not allow us to do the parcellar vinification. So we co-ferment the Barolo with the Pinot Noir, and then we finish with the Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's a big job inside the vineyard to test the berries and then understand which sugar it's okay, and acidity and pH fine to be co-ferment with the next grape variety.
Yeah.
The capacity of the tank is a bit big because 44 years old ago, Guibert doesn't think about. So now we do with what we have, So we trust with a high level analysis before, during, and after the arrest. We can push the level of Mas de Daumas Gassac at his maximum.
Yeah. I'd love to know of our guests this evening. Again, put it in chat or just wave a hand, or who has tried this wine before, if not this vintage. But I mean, who has actually tried, really? Anyone? So quite new to most people. Well, that's great. I mean, it's great to as ever offer a bit of a discovery wine. I think that would you say, Benjamin, that has the wine evolved much in style, or does it remain very, very true to its roots? What would you say about that?
For my test, and it depends, which style of wine would you like. Me, I start to be winemaker in Bordeaux, and then I make wine in Bordeaux, in the Burgundy, south of France. So it depends what we try to, your knowledge, your wine, your test knowledge before. But you have, for me, three tasting part of Mas de Daumas Gassac Red, the 5 first years, and then the 5 more, so 10 years, and then we the rest. So it's more fruity, the 5 first years, and then you have more the note of blackberry, tobacco, and leather. The next 10, and then and then after 10, it's your own test, But it's between Bordeaux and Provence, Bandol style. Huh? So with a Cabernet, the elegance of the Cabernet. So it's a part of just uncommon, No, it's just fruity at the beginning, and then more blackberry, tobacco, leather after 10, and then it's starting to be another wine, but it depends your own tests.
Yeah.
On your own tests. But yeah, we test. Yeah, Samuel talk about 1978 a few weeks ago, and it was almost at the end, of course, but still alive. So with a story behind it, so behind the test, and so always you can find something. But Mas de Daumas Gassac is a vibrant and still alive wine year per year. So it's just the perfect way is to buy, a cases year per year, and then follow the style, and then open one bottle a year, and then switch for another old vintages, and then back to the young one, and then just to understand what's happened at Mas de Daumas Gassac. It's the sauce postcards, by your glass of Mas de Daumas Gassac.
Yeah, well, it's a real treat to try again, and I'm looking forward to trying.
It's a complex, intense white and red, of course.
Yeah, that it really is. It's and it's very hard to compare. I think that's the other thing. Is it's often with wines you find yourself saying, well, this one, it tastes a bit like this, or it reminds me of this, but actually the wine has what I would say. It's the very familiar taste of something quite unusual, as in it tastes very much of itself, and yet somehow it's comforting at the same time. It's comforting, it's distinct, but it's fascinating.
It's an initiatic wine, you like or you don't like, and maybe after 2 or 3 years you like, because you don't know, you test a few wines like that, and then it's when you are with your friend, with your friend wine lovers, it's the wine that you open, and then starts a huge talk meeting, about.
Yeah, I could imagine that, you with my marketing hat on, you could say that it's not a question of whether you do or don't like Mas de Daumas Gassac. It's a question of when you like it. Do you like it when it's very young and the Cabernet is quite dominant on the structure? Do you like it when it's much more old and much more complex and tertiary, or somewhere in between? But it's a fascinating wine. It's a fascinating wine. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Nathan, I think maybe it might be a good time now, as we're done our allotted hour, if you just wanted to remind people of what we have. I'm sure everyone's desperately keen to get hold of some. I know I am. So what are we currently listing? We've got a fair few.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. If there's one thing I love about working with you, Tom, it's discovering thrilling, exciting wines that are just off the, completely out of the ordinary, in fact, extraordinary. And when we started talking with Benjamin and Samuel, it quickly became clear that these are just our type of wines. So in fact, we've got 2 sets of lovely offers here. For the top wines, so this evening we've had the white 20, I've got all in front of me, where have I put them? The white 2019 and the red 2018. Those are the vintages before the most recent one. So the current vintages are red 2019 and white 2020. But in fact, very kindly, the estate has given us allocations of both vintages and even a few bottles of the 2011, which is a 10-year release. So those are all on the club offers page. I've put it in several times on the chat, but I'll put it in again. But if you look under our club offers, We'll be emailing that out to everybody who's attended. There were also about 15 or 20 people who bought packs for this evening, but were too busy commiserating with Denmark or somebody to make it for the evening. So that club offer will go live tomorrow. We'll email it to everybody who's been here, but also out to our mailing list tomorrow. Particularly the back vintages. I jump in and get them because there's not that much of them. From the second estate, Moulin de Gasac, we have got a lovely range. So it's not just the Terra red and white and the Pont De Gasac red and white that we've had this evening. We also have the most marvelous pet nut called Folie and some varietals. There's on the whites, there's a Pipule de Pinet and a gorgeous Viognier, absolutely stunning, lean as anything and just gorgeous. And on the reds, there's a, I'm trying to remember, we took the Merlot and the Syrah, if I remember correctly.
The Merlot and the Syrah.
Yeah, the Merlot and the Syrah for now. So it's a lovely range. There's also a discovery case, which has got, I think it's got 6 or a dozen of the bottles mixed from the Moulin de Gasac range. So we'll email that all out tomorrow. I'll put the links in one last time on the chat so you can find them for yourself. They've all already landed in the country. So all of the horrible stuff that we're going through at the moment, trying to get wines from Italy and France, all of these have already landed in the UK. And then to top it all, the new vintages, which will be, oh, sorry, I forgot the Rosé Frisant 2020 is also in stock, which is really fun. It's really exciting. So we will be, in September, we'll be catching up with the estate's regular program, because this is the first time we've offered these wines to the Honest Grapes Wine Club at all. But in September, they'll be launching the white 2021 of the top vintage, the red 2020, and presumably the Rosé Frisant 2020. We'll probably run a little event then again, but we'll mail you those probably sometime in September. Anyway, lots of lovely wines to choose from. I've got to say, as a punter, you know, somebody who buys wine to drink most of the time, the fact that even the top wines are in the sort of 30 to 50 pound range, and most of the other wines are sort of 11 to 16, 17 pounds. These are absolutely fantastic drinks for the money. So do fill your boots and reward Samuel and Benjamin for their hard work.
Thank you, Nathan. And I would echo that and say the Rosé Frisantic completely took me by surprise. I have to be absolutely honest. You know, when I tried a bottle, which you kindly sent me, Benjamin, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect, and it absolutely blew me away. You know, Saignée method Cabernet Sauvignon rosé. I mean, who knew, frankly? And obviously, sadly, we couldn't put it in a little bottle for you this evening. Yeah. But I'm sure when we next do a tasting, we'll definitely feature it, because it's absolutely brilliant.
If you want something, I mean, seriously, the pet nat that we've put in the range, which again I can't remember exactly, but it's sort of 16, 17 pounds. I'll look it up. And the which is Folie, and the Rosé Frisant, they're just marvelous wines for our lovely English summer.
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you, Benjamin. Any last words from you? Things you'd like to impart that we might have forgotten?
No, you cover everything. Thank you. Just we're very happy to share this meet growers. The first meet growers, and the next time will be, as Nathan said, in September, hopefully, with Samuel too. And hope you enjoy the tasting and you had a great time. And all my sincere thanks to Nathan and you, Tom, and all your teams, and because without you and your work, we would be nothing. So thanks for that. And all the guests and the Honest Grapes team, you are welcome to visit the estate whenever you wish, during your holidays or by the virtual visits. Thanks to you, and thanks for everything. It's a uncommon tasting for us, but it's always a pleasure to work with a company like you own, so like you lead, sorry, and yeah, hopefully to start a powerful partnership and for a long time.
Absolutely. Well, I completely echo that. It's a real treat for us. You know, it's great. It's great to work with such, you know, pioneers in a region, but also, you know, you're not resting on your laurels, and it's clear that, you know, the wines continue to be really exciting. There's new developments, and we're very delighted to be, you know, part of the ongoing story. So thank you, and Samuel as well, you know, for your time this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you everyone. Thanks.
Yeah. And go out, charge, and buy some Mas de Daumas Gassac. Brilliant. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thanks, guys.